Today's briefing regards our first introduction to the 2011 budget. We're required by code to present a 120-day prior to the end of the fiscal year a report to the Assembly which details several things. The 2011 preliminary revenue estimates, the tax limit calculations, any major organizational changes that we're anticipating, our preliminary general government capital budget and plan, and the administration's service priorities. So you probably all got copies of the memo. If not, it's on the back table there along with the associated press release. But there are a couple key things that we'll talk about in relation to what the memo gives to the Assembly in terms of data. And probably one of the key elements is what happens under different taxing scenarios based on the revenue that we're projecting and based on the expenditures that we're projecting. For 2011, the situation continues as it did in 2010, where expenditures exceed revenues anywhere between $8.5 million to $18.5 million. And those are under two scenarios. The $8.5 million gap is even if we tax to the tax cap. If we don't tax to the tax cap and have about a 3% increase in property taxes, we're looking then at about an $18.5 million deficit in the 2011 budget. So the reasons for the gap are a number of things. We of course have the number one is the contractual pay amounts, the increases in the labor contracts per their agreements. We also have a pretty significant increase in the cost of health insurance for next year. We're anticipating between 22 and 23% increase in health costs. And we still have to play catch up with our police and fire retirement funds. Those funds are underfunded, and it's our obligation to get them back up to where the actuaries say that they're at a required level. So we're now looking at another probably $8.5 million this year for 2011 in order to get that back to the proper required levels. Another thing to remember is this is just simply the city budget and city taxes we're talking about. The school district has not yet formulated their budget, but it's anticipated they're also going to be looking for increases just based on some preliminary discussions with them. So there may even be some more sticker shock, if you will, when the school district begins preparing their budget. One of the things that I mentioned is that we're required to present to them is what we're planning for organizational changes. And one of the things that we're looking to do is not just simply cut the budget, even though that's probably going to be necessary, but we're looking to reorganize city government and to find efficiencies in government in every single department. And you've heard us talk before about our performance measures and how we're looking for accountability out of each department, setting goals, measuring their achievements. But we're also doing some reorgs within the actual structure of government. One that we'll be presenting to you, I think in a week, is the reorganization of the Community Planning and Development Department, which will be the Department of Public Works, and it'll incorporate maintenance and operations, traffic, and project management and engineering. And then our Community Development Department, which will have planning, neighborhoods, and development services. So we're going back to a more traditional model there, if you will, under the Public Works format. And under this scenario, we're looking to save hundreds of thousands of dollars in the first year alone through the reorg. So we are confident that as we continue to move forward, that's going to be really one of our main goals is, again, not just looking at tax dollars and revenues, but also at efficiencies, and every single department is charged with achieving that. So that's kind of the gist of what we're looking at. Well, just to give you I guess a sense of the challenge that we're facing. If you look, for example, at just one department in the city, the police department, for example, which of course is a high priority for us to maintain a strong police department, but without adding one single personnel in the police department, that budget goes up $4 million next year. And so you see what a challenge we have just within the existing contracts. A department with no increases in personnel is going to cost us $4 million more in 2011. So it really makes it difficult to add to departments. So you want to increase public safety presence, and you're faced with your existing force costing you millions of dollars more. It's very, very challenging. The fire department, on similar lines, I think their budget next year without an additional firefighter being hired is just under $3 million increase just with the existing personnel. So it's very challenging, and it's going to be some very, very interesting dialogue and decision-making with the Assembly over the next couple months to figure out basically whether it's between $8.5 and $18 million in that gap between revenues and expenditures. What are the priorities? What gets cut? And the good thing is, we're going to, here in the next week or two, also have the data from our community dialogues, which hopefully will help us guide some of that decision-making. And just a couple other quick facts. We now have the data where the average cost per a city employee with salary and benefits is about $102,000. That's the average per city employee. You've got over half of all municipal employees now make over $100,000 in salary and benefits. And it's just really not sustainable, and so that's part of the challenge we're facing. And I'll just stop there with that, and if anybody has any questions, glad to try and answer them. And again, I think you've all picked up the memo and a lot of data in there. And if not questions today, feel free to ask us over the next few days.